Hello, everyone. We are here for week 2, FanDuel defenses. Let's get to it, Jason. Are we excited or are we excited?
I'm somewhere in between.
Yeah, I mean, defenses aren't necessarily the most exciting to talk about every week, at least compared to, wide receivers. But as we saw last week, if you can nail that Vikings D, it's certainly a big upswing for your potential money made.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, if you were on a Vikings defense and you set yourself apart, it kind of took off some of the edge of some of the other guys, which it's always nice. I mean, I played Vikings D, but I also had some Fleener, so it made things a little bit easier to stomach. But obviously, that's not really the case every week.
What are you talking about, Todd Gurley, bro?
Oh
Going
man,
at me like that?
no, no, not no. I had my girly shares, but I wish I didn't.
Yeah. All right. Well, all right. Let's get into it here. Cash game defenses. You highlighted the Panthers first against the 49ers. That's certainly a good matchup in my eyes, just based on, Panthers defense sort of struggled against CJ Anderson and the Broncos last week, but Demarius sort of hobbled. Trevor Siemian is not a good NFL quarterback. So we'll see how this translates to the 49ers, but I just assume this is gonna get better for the Panthers here.
I do too. I mean, they're at home. Obviously, we could look at this 49ers offense that rolled through a Rams defense and, I mean, actually played pretty well. Guys like Carlos Hyde, Blaine Gabbert rushed the ball pretty well. I don't expect that to happen on the road against Carolina. One, you're traveling cross country. Two, you're facing a defense. Yes, they did lose Josh Norman, but still an above average defense. Carolina, Seattle, those are easily the two top picks. You're picking on two of the worst offenses in football right now. You can really go here either way. I'm fine with Carolina. Pretty safe floor, relatively high favorites there, low total for 49ers. I think it just all kind of adds up to them in Seattle kind of just being that top tier this week.
You know what? When I first did my analysis of the Panthers Broncos that I just did there, when a cat like throws up and it's like just a little, just like right on the floor and it's like a big clump.
Yes.
That's kind of what I did with that there. I don't know why I brought up Trevor Siemian. Anyway, the point is there's no CJ Anderson like dominant running game like the Broncos have. Sure, Carlos Hyde had a good week last week, but that's not indicative of what I think this 49ers team's potential is going forward. I love the Panthers as a cash defense here, even if they are a little expensive. I think it's totally worth it. Blaine Gabbert, we saw him get away with the rushing yards, but man, it's there. He's just throwing errant passes all over the place.
Yeah, you're not going to see that type of production. And we saw that last year. I mean, we saw it was the same exact situation where Carlos Hyde had a great night against a good Minnesota defense on the doubleheader of a Monday night. And then you went to just targeting the 49ers with defenses every week after that. So I'm not expecting this one to turn around. You and I were talking about Chip Kelly. They did look better coached. There could be some progress there. I don't think it'll be able to show against Carolina, though. I think their defense is still one of the better ones in the league. And I'm fine with that really in any format.
I wouldn't call myself a Jeremy Curley truther, but I'm somewhere in that range. I loved him at TCU, and I certainly loved him when he was playing for the Jets for those few years. He's an all right player, but he's not going to, get it done for you against the Panthers. So anyway, moving on. We get another interesting matchup here with the Redskins, another underperformer as of week 1 against the tough Steelers offense. Even without Martavis, they still are a very, very good offense. So they go up against the Cowboys. Obviously, that offensive line is intimidating. Their week 1 performance was not. Des Bryant was not. Dak Prescott was not. Jason Witten is a man amongst men, but 9 for 66 isn't scaring me off the Redskins either.
No, I mean, it's not like Dan Bailey's going to keep me off of using Washington. I mean, as you mentioned, it was tons of checkdowns from Prescott to guys like Witten and Beasley. We saw that. Washington will take that all day and just kind of eat that up. Josh Norman, I don't know. I saw something that he may not shadow Des Bryant, which once again would just kind of baffle me. I don't know why your number one corner would not be doing that. But if that's the case, I'll probably linger off Washington a little bit in terms of kind of cash games and maybe more pivot them to GPPs. If I do see Norman's going to be on Bryant, I might kind of jump back on and put him in the cash games. But in terms of value, 4,400, I still don't expect the Cowboys to score a ton. If you want to get some exposure to other teams, I mean, that's still a decent price difference from guys like Seattle, from teams like Carolina as well. And you're just looking at what Dallas did against the Giants defense that I'm not really high on. It was just kind of a lot of dink and dunk down the field. As you mentioned, the offensive line is good in Dallas. I like the front seven in Washington, though. I don't think Elliott's gonna have a big day. I don't think he's gonna have a ton of success. They really turned it on in the second half in terms of rush defense. And obviously adding Josh Norman to that secondary still is going to be an improvement. Breland had a tough time defending, Antonio Brown, as anyone would. But you know what? If he can get some help and they can game plan for Bryant this week, I think they'll be in better shape.
And in terms of the game flow, I think it's going to be much more in their direction this week, especially, Kirk Cousins isn't that bad as he looked. I actually think the Steelers are a pretty underrated defense with Ryan Shazier. I think he's one of the best defenders in the league. Certainly played that way yesterday. I think they're on the up and up. James Harrison still monstering around is how I would describe it. Just a huge hulking man, just making angry plays and making people terrified. So anyway, GPP defenses, Green Bay Packers against the Vikings. What do you see in there?
I love the price, first of all, 4,400. We saw Minnesota go on the road, and we saw them have big issues trying to move the ball offensively. They lucked out with 2 defensive touchdowns. That's how they scored their points. Outside of that, there was nothing. Adrian Peterson couldn't get anything on the ground. I mean, we saw, it's still going to be probably Sean Hill unless Sam Bradford's ready to go. They still haven't announced that. Either way, I feel comfortable deploying the Packers in GPPs. They were pretty good against a powerful Jacksonville offense that I think is pretty one of the top 10 kind of passing attacks in the game. So in terms of holding them to a pretty minimal efficiency in week 1, I don't see them having really any trouble here on the road against the Vikings. I think the Packers are actually quite underrated in terms of using them. I'm not going to be on them in cash games. I think they're more GPPs. For some reason, I have a little bit of hesitancy just kind of using them. I rather either spend up or probably go with the Washington because I like them more at home.
Yeah, and so in terms of that matchup with the Jaguars last week, what you really noticed was on TJ Yeldon's runs, he was actually playing well, breaking tackles, getting to the outside after, there wasn't anything in the middle, cutting it outside, cutting it back in. He was making plays, but overall, they were just swarming him on runs. And obviously that's a pass-heavy team that teams aren't really worried about the run game. So I actually really like the Packers defense. I think they're going to be really good. I just think the Packers in general are going to be really good this year. This could be one of those years where they go, 14-2. And I think the offense is healthy. They're going to be giving them a lot of leads this year. I think this matchup is a perfect example of that, where the Vikings, they just don't. Stephon Diggs looks awesome. But with Sean Hill and a very new to the team, Sam Bradford, I just don't see how they're going to move the ball. I mean, maybe Adrian Peterson has a good day, but again, I'm a little worried about how they looked last week in terms of the Packers' rush defense.
Yeah, I am too. I think AP is going to have, he may break off a couple of big runs, but outside of that, I think he's going to have to really earn it. I mean, it's going to be a matter of if the Packers are able to get up and kind of play ahead a little bit, that's a big improvement for this Packers defense, because you know what? You want Sean Hill throwing the ball. You want Sam Bradford throwing the ball. And those guys do not arrow it out. And this is not a Vikings team that can play from behind. So I like the Packers here. I think they are borderline cash, but I'm probably going to reserve them a little bit more for GPPs.
You know who else you want throwing the ball if you're an opposing defense?
Case Keenum.
Yeah, Case Keenum. That's right. That's right. You do want Case Keenum throwing the ball. I'd rather have Teddy Bridgewater while he's in surgery than Case Keenum, like sleeping in the bed. I want Teddy Bridgewater there instead of Case Keenum.
We should probably make it known that you are a Rams fan. instead of just, like a blatant
No,
Case Keenum truther or something.
I don't think we need to preface that at all. I think the facts are facts, my friend. Teddy Bridgewater under anesthesia over Case Keenum. That's my hot take of the day. Uh, Jaguars and Chargers. I'm pretty interested in this matchup too from a GPP sense on FanDuel. A little tougher to fit them in because we do have the Packers right there. But what are you seeing here?
That's my move. I mean, it's obviously tough. I'm looking, my three GPP defenses are 43, 45, and 4,400. Jaguars coming in at 43, going to be really low owned. Heading on the road to take on the San Diego offense that just lost Keenan Allen. And when you're talking about obviously Danny Woodhead, who is kind of their number one threat now, Travis Benjamin, Inman, those guys do not scare me. I like the youth here in Jacksonville. We've always been talking about the last few weeks about how this team is really going to be good on the defensive side of the ball in the future. I think we're going to see a little bit of flash of that here in week 2. I think there's a lot of potential of them for, kind of jumping on the secondary. I do think Jacksonville can play with a lead as well. So I like it. I just think it sets up well. It's definitely going to be really low owned because, as you mentioned, the Packers are right there. The Ravens are right there. You got the Redskins as well. They're not going to be looked at. And I think they held their own against an Aaron Rodgers offense last week. I really did. I thought Rodgers could have done much better, even though he was very solid. But you know what? They were one, split second away from holding them to another touchdown less and kind of keeping them in check. So going up against Rivers in this offense, I don't expect them to have a real run game. Melvin Gordon, it's obviously going to shift away from him more towards Woodhead. I still think it's going to be dink and dunk. It's just going to be a matter of whether they can get those kind of Travis Benjamin passes down the sideline to really work. And if they can't, I don't see them scoring really a ton of points.
Oh, yeah, Woodhead and Cash. He's going to get 45 receptions for 75 yards. I can't wait. Can't wait for that. And he's going to win someone at GPP because that's just what he does. But as far as this offense actually being effective, I mean, Keenan Allen out, just going to be the same thing as last year. They just get behind huge pretty much every game. They were doing well in the running game, and they just totally went away from it, even when they were up by 20 points. I don't know why. But that seems to be Phillip Rivers' comfort zone when he's in the shotgun, dumping it off and making those efficient passes that, I mean, we know he's really good at that. So that's kind of what he wants to do and what he's comfortable with. So I don't think they're going to run that much, and it's just going to limit their upside.
Yeah, 6 points in the second half of that Kansas City game. That's not looking well for what we're going to probably be predicting in the future.
Right. And last one here, I really like the Ravens defense, who I think is on the up and up against this Browns team who lost Robert Griffin last week.
Yeah, definitely. And you can say what you want. Maybe it's better for that way for the Browns to have McCown come back in because obviously we saw McCown throw pretty well. I feel like people are actually going to probably toss in some McCown shares. I think they look at last year's numbers against the Ravens. They're like, oh, hey, this might work out. I'm not buying that. 4,500, I'll take the jump at a Baltimore defense here. I like their upside. They looked pretty well against Buffalo. Obviously, Buffalo doesn't have a ton of attacking power. I actually think Cleveland has more, given Barnage, Coleman there, Duke Johnson out of the backfield. Even Terrell Pryor didn't look all that bad. But yeah, I think 4,500, there's a lot of upside here. You still look at a Browns team that does turn over the ball quite a bit. Offensive line, pretty average. And you look at last year, I just think Baltimore 2015 really banged up on both sides of the ball. Are they going to be anything spectacular this year? No, but I still think they're going to be serviceable, and especially in these types of matchups.
Certainly agree. Browns do have Corey Coleman. They do have Terrell Pryor in terms of deep threats, but Josh McCown isn't really a deep ball type guy. He's more of a dump off, just like we talk about a lot of these backup quarterbacks. That's kind of, what they do. So in terms of that, I look at the Ravens as a really nice upside piece with really strong, really strong upside in terms of CJ Mosley and Timmy Jernigan.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the upside's there. Not a bad price either. I'm going to probably be splitting my shares more than any other week, I think, at defense. I just look at these three teams here at the bottom and then even tossing in Washington. It's like, oh, man, I want to get some pieces to all of them, and I kind of hope one of them hits off more than the others. And for me, it probably could be the Packers. I think that might be kind of the more safer play out of the 4 bottom tier guys there.
Absolutely. I will say I think the Packers are a cash game defense. But yeah, overall, I pretty much agree with this. You can check out both of our defensive breakdowns for both FanDuel and DK. They're basically the same. We hadn't even talked about this before we got on to record, and it looks like we're heading in the same direction. So hopefully this helps, and we will see you guys in week 2. 3,